should be funded at the end of each fiscal year according to the replacement reserve study and capital improvement plan. Okay, so that is typically done by a contract with with a financial firm such as NBS or Wildan or who's the one that we used before that did the BARTON, those folks. But it's not in the budget to do that.
So if we go forward, we can say we'd like to do this. Could you get us we're going to give you direction to go out and get a bid to do this. Could we do that before
You don't need a bid to do this. I mean, you can set up these financial reserves. It's a no-brainer. Just saying how you're going to spend. It's ultimate in transparency. You show the public how you're going to be spending your money. Some of those reserves might have zero because we don't have tons of money.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
They might say zero right now. But,
well, I'm sure they all say zero.
Well,
and seriously, and you can. It's not unusual to just say it is our goal to have a reserve here. We recognize that need. The current, the target is to fund the replacement of equipment. We're going to do a study in the future that's going to determine that amount. So in other words, let's do this. The long meeting.
It's good.
Let's have this conversation one more time, either at the board or at a finance committee or something, and then bring it back to the board, and I can add a little bit of how do we get there. To it. How do we get to? I mean, it's in there a little bit, but how do we get to know what that target is? And
I'm not opposed. I like to have better understanding. And Emery said he would make the motion, so he's pretty strong on it. So Emery,
I'll make the motion. I move that we approve a new policy on district financial reserves. I think it's a really good idea. I think every public agency should do that. I need a second.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Dan second. Emery pushed. Dan second. Okay. Jim, you have a comment?
What are if we set this precedence, are there repercussions if we don't meet these goals that we've set for ourselves? Or are these just numbers we kind of say, we're going to do our best to meet this number?
That's
my
change
only
your
hiccup.
accounting. The repercussions are they are going to change your accounting. They are going to, similar to what the language that you see in your annual audit about the LAIF account, even though there's really, the auditor doesn't really include a lot of information about it, it's considered a restricted amount of money that requires board approval.
But I guess to dumb it down for me, you got to really dumb this down. Wes probably understands exactly what you're talking about. But Jim, he's a dumb guy. If I say that in order to meet the requirements for capital facility replacement reserve,
Yeah.
If someone comes in and determines that we need $500,000 in that account, and we don't meet that $500,000, we just simply can't put it there. Are there repercussions for us not meeting that amount? If we can only put 100,000 in there.
Yeah,
do we just call it a shortfall? Hey, we haven't met this. Is that
you might get if you have established a legitimate reserve and you've got a legitimate business need for that reserve and you're not addressing funding it, you might get comments from your auditor that say that so we might, in reality, just from that perspective, as far as the wording on the funding, I'm not as concerned about the other language, but the commitment on the funding. For example, I just want to read that one on the capital facility replacement reserve. Annual contributions from the user fees are currently based on annual projected requirements in conjunction with the overall budget, replacement reserve, and capital improvement plan. Interest earnings will be approved. In addition, the board of directors may approve the designation of available fund balance as capital replacement reserves, provided, however, that insufficient operating fund balances are preserved or sufficient. Okay, That's just saying, if you've got money carried over from year to year, you're gonna look to put it
In this special,
in, you're gonna
special
look to put it away in this account. And it may be in excess of what you're able to do normally through the budget process with your rates. This does not say an amount you're going to put in it annually.
That's what
I'm,
our hands aren't tied.
Russ has a question for you.
He hasn't finished my answer.
yeah.
We haven't tied our, and I agree that this is great, we need to have the money, I just want to make sure, because I don't understand it, and maybe a discussion afterwards would be better, so I get a better understanding.
I think I'm going to help clarify this. Pete, wouldn't it be true to say that 14 months ago we didn't have any wells? Mm-hmm. We had $1.1 million, $1.2 million.
Yes.
If that had been divided up into 5, and I'm going to call them escrow accounts,
Yeah.
we would have still had the $1.1 million, $1.2 million, but they couldn't have been available to us because they were locked down into these accounts, and it wouldn't have been available to fund construction of the wells. And
You just go to the board and you ask the board.
Is that not true? Because you said it was restricted, and you could be restricted in the way you spent it.
We would have to follow the specific guidelines for moving it around, and the board does have the authority to do that, but you would have to. The good thing is you have to do it by a specific action of the board. I think it's even by resolution you've got to do it. But you would have to document it, and you would have to document how you're going to put it back. Because this isn't how you're going to refund it. You're going to, if you establish a legitimate need, and you've said you need that reserve, and you've got a methodology for it, and you borrow it, you've got to, we would then be putting it back at this point as we're getting reimbursed.
So if we don't, this is something you don't want to get carried away with. You would like to do it, but you also it's kind of tying your hands if you have some unforeseen big thing happen and it doesn't fall under those guidelines.
I think it's probably worthy of a review in either committee or at the board. Once I've had a little bit of conversation with the CPA and the auditor about, I didn't think about talking to the auditor about how this would lay out and how different scenarios would be affected. I know of many districts that have adopted them we have no funding to put into it and we have no balance yet. And we'll amend this policy when we get to that point. But I'm getting a little bit punchy and tired, unfortunately, a little bit early for that.
The one thing I would say, the positive side, is if we identified a figure that needs to go to put us in a positive position to fix things, it also has a rate implication, and it's an educational thing for the community. I've seen at the homeowners situation when they've done their annual budget, they have a massive spreadsheet about depreciation, and they have it all lined out of what the depreciation is, the useful life of XYZ, and how much money they have in that specific line item and when they anticipate replace it. And I think that from that standpoint, it's a good thing. The concern I have is, does it indicate that, what is the rate implications? Well, I know
some previous board had the foresight to have that money available to us when we needed it last year.
Right.
And we need to leave a legacy heritage for the future.
I mean, if you really wanted to adopt it, I would adopt it with language changes just to make sure that it was clear in the funding and in the target balance that there's no commitment to a balance until such time as the studies are completed to know what that cost is. And then as far as the annual funding, that there's in reality a statement in each one that the annual funding amount will be determined once that target balance has been established.
I call for the vote, or let us go out to the public. We know so
Well, we have a first, we don't have a second. Do you want?
I second it.
He seconded.
I'm sorry, my apologies. Okay. Public comment, Mr. West?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments. One of the things we don't do all the time is go back and check some of the things that's already been done. When you vote every month, or I say vote every month, when you approve every month the treasurer's report, you approve the cash levels, okay? And that was put in back in 2007-8 with the original plan, so that you are approving any movements on the money. Back into 2004, 5, something of that nature, I don't remember exactly when, we did have a rough number of how much of that LAIF was tied to extending the capacity, okay, which is basically when we put a new meter in. Most of that was eaten up by the time we got into around 2010. And so the then treasurer came up with the auditor, and they decided that we could continue to use that LAIF money because we were paying off that $1.5 million tub that sits out here with water in it. Mm-hmm. That was an expansion of the capacity. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know that I buy that personally. I'm just saying that's the history of it. So don't get real scared of these things. You may be proven wrong someplace, but it has been considered, and it was looked at before. Now, from an accounting standpoint and from a reserve standpoint, no business, I don't think there's a single business in the world that is anywhere as close to being able to reserve things. You're talking about depreciation, but in reality, when you pay for what you've depreciated, you're going to pay 2 or 3 times that. Mm-hmm. You got to pay the replacement cost. It isn't reserving the depreciation numbers. You got to be replacing that great big number. The accountants for years, and Barton and Wells used a 25% ratio for your operating reserves. Okay, that's an old accounting deal too. That's 3 months worth of your operating money. And today, at our levels, that would be $300,000 or $400,000 you would have reserved. There's a lot of other different numbers, but there's also what most people do, especially in our country, and I hope that's not why we got a $20 trillion debt now. But the other alternative is you borrow money. Okay? And so effectively your interest that you're paying on that becomes what you've been reserving in reverse. Okay? So I guess the point I'm trying to make on it is that there's a lot of different ways to handle this. This is why you need an accountant. Your CPA has no idea what the hell's going on in this place. Your auditor has no idea what the hell's going on in this place. That's why you need a financial person here that lives and dies in this and knows what we need to do to be able to run this organization. But I do have one question. That's my comments. But I do have a question. The reserves, and I know I read this someplace, and I think it was in the 218 book. The reserves they do have an effect on how much you can raise rates. Okay, when I say you can raise rates, basically we can't raise rates greater than the benefits that people are getting. That's kind of the rule of thumb. It's probably the legal rule too. So how does these reserves affect, I think this is what you were talking about, the rates. How does these reserves affect the price of our water, if you will, or how much we can raise the prices of the water? And so if we have these, if we say we're going to have a 25% reserve, is that going to say then we can go up 25%? Well, not 25%, right, but a proportional number.
What percentage do we have to, if we're not reserving anything today, what do we have to go to put ourselves in that financial stability point?
Well, from a practical standpoint, I think that's what you'd want to do is if you're going into a 218, you're going to say, how much can I squeeze the folks out there, and that's the amount I'm going to call for a reserve, if that's what I have to get up to the number I want, okay? But by the way, Jim, this is called starting with the end in mind, not starting at job descriptions.